And how are you today? We're going to continue from where we left off yesterday. Are you sexually compatible or are you sexually incompatible? That's the question, okay? Yesterday we talked about the definition of sexually compatible, and we had a new definition that I think was really cool. So if you want to know what it is, just go back to yesterday and listen to it. It was really awesome. It was really cool. Some new stuff that you can learn. Today I want to talk about some key points, very important points about being sexually compatible. All right, so the number one key point is that what your characteristics are, your variables. That's what research calls it. Sexual compatibility is related to variables, right? And these variables are self-awareness, mental body image, sexual behaviors, personality, psychological maturity, and sexual companionship, to name a few. So variables mean who you are, what you're about, what makes you you. And these are the different aspects of you that come into play when you're actually referring to compatibility or when you're referring to being able to interact with your mate, right? Interpersonal relations, all right? So we want to know what those are so that we can do something about it if we have to. And right now, I don't want to go into details. I will do that probably tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. But I want it to be clear. The number one key point that we have to be aware of is we have different things that make us compatible, that we're sometimes aware of, some of them, but some of them we're not. For example, self-awareness, right? Are we really aware of what we're projecting when we're with our partner? I don't know that we know that all the time. I think sometimes we forget, we get slack, and we say, all right, he knows me, I can be whatever I want to be. No, you got to be aware of what you're projecting, aware of what you're signaling, aware of what message you're sending out there. So very important to be aware of that self-awareness, because it does take part in being compatible. Somebody's going to decide whether they're going to be with you or not based on your own self-awareness, what you are projecting, what you are trying to say to the world. So I'm big into being self-awareness and being aware that your message is an aura, it's an energy. So be very aware that what you're thinking affects your self-awareness, what you're projecting. And I'll go more into that I think the day after tomorrow. Mental body image, right? That is about how you see your body, how you see your shape and your size and your color. So many things go into that, right? Your hair, your smile, your lips. Men love looks, we know that. And we like looks too. So when you're thinking of mental body image, I'm thinking more in the bedroom when you're in between the sheets and you're thinking about your shape. That can be a problem, right? So you don't want to give that intimidated look of fear or dislike or disdain for your body. You always want to have that self-confidence. So that mental body image is very important. Again, it's going to be able to convey to your partner how you feel about yourself. So you never want to feel insecure. You always want to be confident regarding your mental body image, because it can play games with your mind and affect your orgasm. Sexual behaviors. Now that's key, right? So that sexual behavior is the act, the activity between the sheets, right? What you guys decide to do. So what you decide to do is compatibility, depending on what you agree to or not agree to. But of course, conversations, communication, discussions have to be had. And remember, before the sheets are involved. Personality, psychological maturity. So personality, remember, go back to my lovely talk on personality. I love personality talks. Do the quiz, do the quiz, do the quiz. And psychological maturity. So you've got to be mature. You've got to be able to handle situations, whether it's a disagreement or whether it's some sort of row or an argument or anything that happens. Some, little thing could trip you and you could be triggered, and then next thing you know, you're losing control. No, that maturity, that personality will tell us generally how you're going to respond in a situation. So we really want you to know your personality so that you can get to know the partner that you're with, their personality, and both of you can agree to an agreement to be compatible. This is something you're going to plan. And I really wish we could get it written down and sort of like witnessed and notarized and maybe put in a vault somewhere or in a bank somewhere so that we could have that to fall back on whenever we have any issues. Okay, so really important to know your personality, yourself, and your partner's personality, and be mature, because if you're not mature, that relationship will be hard to maintain, right? And then sexual companionship. Sexual companionship is that friendship, right? In a nutshell, you really want to have some sort of friendship because you want to have fun and you want to be able to be relaxed with your partner. So these are things that can contribute to your sexual compatibility or your sexual incompatibility. Very important. That's number one. That's why I put it number one. Number two, key point to take home: the concept of sexual compatibility predicts relationship. It predicts your relationship. Adjustment, meaning arguments, disagreements. So you've got to adjust, right? So the concept of sexual compatibility predicts your relationship adjustment, which means can you really adjust in your relationship? Can you agree to disagree? Can you agree to agree? Can you agree to peacefully disagree, right? Or is it going to be some row that you take to the bed and then you're not going to talk to the person anymore? So that concept of sexual compatibility actually can predict your relationship adjustment. That means we can tell you whether you're going to succeed in being able to reach an agreement by knowing whether you're sexually compatible. So being compatible, the more you're compatible, the more likely you're going to agree, right? The less compatible, the less likely you're going to agree when it comes to disagreements. So that adjustment is important. I love that word adjustment. You got to adjust. You got to sort of like bring into consideration the other person's point of view. That's how I look at it, okay? So that concept is the strongest predictor of sexual and relationship satisfaction. Okay, so we now know, studies show that you're going to have great satisfaction and a great relationship if you're sexually compatible and you're able to adjust and reach agreements. The more agreements you make, the better the relationship, the better the sexual relationship too, right? Marriage too, marital relationships. And this is in association with personality. We've talked about that before. We know about personality, so we have to know our personality, and we have to have a decent personality. So we've got to be able to adjust our personalities when needed too, but we've got to know what we're like and what we're doing wrong to adjust. So make sure you do that quiz. So it is in association with the personality and interpersonal relationships, which means how you communicate, right? How you talk to your partner. So don't be disrespectful. Don't have disdain. Don't treat the person like they're nothing. Be cordial, be kind, be sweet, be nice to your partner. Okay? All that is part of the compatibility, and I'm sure you already know that, right? Number three, most relational problems overlap the sexual problems. So, sexual dysfunction can be a cause and effect of sexual incompatibility. Sexual dysfunction can be a cause and effect. It can go both ways, right? So, if you have sexual dysfunction, it can affect your compatibility. If you have a compatibility issue regarding sex, it can affect your sexual dysfunction. So, that's the two-way street that we're talking about here, resulting in a relationship maladjustment. You're not going to be able to adjust if you have sexual dysfunctions. That's got to be addressed, whether it's a physical, mental, psychological, environmental, whatever the reason, hormonal, you've got to address it because it can affect the relationship permanently, resulting in sexual incompatibility and a maladjustment affecting individuals. It's going to affect you as an individual, affecting your family, your kids, your mother, your father, your aunts, uncles. Everyone's going to be affected because of your maladjustment, your unhappiness, you're not being able to agree. So we've got to get that keyword agree. And it can affect social levels, right? The society, your job, your work, where you go out, right? And mingle with other people, right? And can lead to divorce because when you are not able to adjust, you are arguing, you are fighting, and we don't want that. Even if it's a silent fight, you're still fighting. You want to get to a point where you can agree. Otherwise, dun dun dun, you end up in divorce. And I know a lot of people have. The divorce rate is very high. Could this be the reason? Absolutely, part of the reason. Number 4, key point. The majority of divorce applicants do not have an adequate sexual satisfaction with their spouses. They do not have adequate sexual satisfaction with their spouses. So when you go to the divorce courts and you count and see how many people have had sexual issues, the majority of divorce applicants are divorced because of not being sexually satisfied in the bedroom. And remember, connected to compatibility, right? So you've got to be sexually compatible or aim to be. That's the new definition. You aim to be. You talk, you discuss, put it in writing, remember? And get it down pat so that both of you are on the same page. Number 5, key point. Sexual incompatibility predicts extramarital affairs. So if you're not compatible, more likely someone stepping out of the relationship, all right? Out of the marriage, out of the relationship. That one is a no-brainer because, someone needs some satisfaction going, right? So someone's going to say, hey, if I can't get it here, I'm going to look for it somewhere else. You know this already. I know you know that. That's why we want to address this incompatibility and become compatible as much as we can, right? And sometimes we can't, but we have to know the information to try it and sometimes be way ahead of the game to prevent it even getting into the picture before it gets bad, before it gets worse, before it affects the relationship. You want to address it. Number 6, key point, identifying factors related to sexual compatibility in people who want a long-term relationship can help predict the success of their relationship. So basically they're saying that if you're compatible, you're going to have a successful relationship. We can predict it depending on the different points, the variables, right? We can actually predict, depending on how many variables match or how many variables you can agree to, we can predict the success of the relationship. When I say we, studies say that they can predict the success of the relationship. And I do think that is news that we should all have. Okay? We all need to work on being sexually compatible with our partner. And the last one I squeezed in here was a little exclamation mark. Identify it before it happens. Can we do that? And the answer is yes, we can. Can you find out where you're not compatible or think, I'm going to have a disagreement here. What can I do to avoid that disagreement? What can I do to make sure that it's an easy disagreement, that we can get to agree? So you can actually do that. And if you need help, reach out for professional help. I always say that. But the reality is that it's happening a lot. And a lot of people don't realize it's happening. So we need to realize it's happening by stepping back, analyzing the situation, looking for these different problems that we could anticipate in the relationship. And again, this is all individual, so each one has to have their own analysis and identify it before it affects the relationship, before it causes a maladjustment or a demise to the relationship and it's too late. You fall out of love and you give up and get divorced. That's what I'm trying to get you to avoid. I want the opposite to happen. I want you to identify that problem, sort it out, talk about it, happily agree, put it in writing if you have to, and have a great relationship sexually and relationship-wise. I always say that because you need both to have the best longevity and the best quality of life that you want to have for the future, right? Live long and live happy. All right, so that was my key points on sexual compatibility. I have another diagram I want to show you real quick before we go. So here we go. This is just a quick pointer to let you know that there are connections to everything that we're talking about. It's really connected. And you'll see that sexual compatibility is at the top. So it's really important. And it actually does produce mutual sexual satisfaction when you're compatible, right? So that's really important. So both of you will be satisfied in the bedroom. It also produces sexual motivation. Motivation meaning wanting to do something. You're going to want to have sex because a lot of people have a problem being motivated to have sex. But when you're compatible, you have more of a chance of being interested and wanting to approach your partner and instigate, actually be the first person to make that move to have sex, which I know some men really do like. So the sexual motivation there is important. If you don't have sexual motivation, you might not be sexually compatible. So when you have sexual compatibility, you get motivated sexually. And you also have marital and relational satisfaction when you're sexually compatible. But here's what's important I want you to see. The sexual compatibility causes sexual satisfaction across the board and causes sexual desire. So when people say that they have a low desire, low libido, that might again be related to the sexual incompatibility. So that sexual desire does get awakened and you're full of wanting to have sex with your partner, right? Great sex. And then it also causes a sexual motivation. So you get double whammy. You get the sexual desire going, right? And sexual compatibility will get the sexual motivation going. And then you have that centerpiece that needs to be there to enjoy sexual satisfaction. You have to have that sexual motivation and that sexual desire. So if you're having a problem having those desires and motivations, look into the sexual compatibility. Yeah, and we do have medications and hormones and other things we've got to look into also in physicals and stuff. But also don't forget, this is something that you can do at home. Sit down, have a great discussion about agreeing to be compatible. And either tomorrow or the day after, we'll talk about more variables. We'll go into depth about the variables that you need to know about yourself and that you need to do something about if you find that it's a problem in your life. Okay, guys? All right. Good to see you. See you later. Bye.